on the far side of town, sharing a dream with anyone. She's made it through heaven, she's made it through hell. It's just another story to tell. Have you ever felt you're missing the dream? Have you ever wished your life was like the movie on the screen, filled with heartbreaks and fights through Hollywood nights, making up a bar queen on the phone in the great big boulevard, the place she belongs. It's just another story she tells. Have you ever felt you're missing the dream? Have you ever wished your life was like the movie on the screen, filled with heartbreaks and fights through Hollywood nights, through Hollywood nights, through Hollywood nights. You always looked after me, brother, when we were children. You always had my back. You took all the blame when our father caught us doing things that drove him mad. Through the years I could lean on you when I messed up. I'd call you in the night, but I broke too many promises and we split up. Though I still need ya, you gotta save me now. I'm slipping so far down, it's only you I trust to set me free from this. I don't know how I got into this awful spot. I don't know where it ends, so I can use your helping hand tonight. I wanna say that I'm sorry, I got sidetracked and I left you in the cold. I've seen your side of the story, I felt the drawback. My mistake took its toll. Finally, I have realized I was dead wrong. I wasn't thinking straight. No more lies, and from here on out I'll be better, 'cause I still need ya. You gotta save me now. I'm slipping so far down, it's only you I trust to set me free from this. I don't know how I
From the start to the finish, go hard and we winning. It's the heart of a villain, it's the heart of a villain. From the start to the finish, go hard and we winning. It's the heart of a villain, it's the heart of a villain. Hey yo, heart of a villain beats hard in the centrifuge. Bearded BP, 100 interviews. All it takes is 2 mics and 1 line. This is Bearded Villains podcast worldwide. Driving cross countries, getting ball tires. Fam across ponds, always inspired. Chapters connect, and then it's on fire. Check your phone, cause BV is like a live wire. They said that we couldn't do it and that another could. Never underestimate the power of brotherhood. Every bro, every chapter, every caption. Heart of a villain, bro, lights, camera, action. Action, action, action. Let's go. From the start to the finish, go hard and we winning. It's the heart of a villain, it's the heart of a villain. From the start to the finish, go hard and we winning. It's the heart of a villain, it's the heart of a villain. From the start to the finish, go hard and we winning. It's the heart of a villain, it's the heart of a villain. From the start to the finish, go hard and we winning. It's the heart.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Thursday night edition of The Heart of a Villain, the podcast and live stream devoted to the Bearded Villains Worldwide Brotherhood and the lives they're changing all over the world. This is the final week here on the podcast of May 2022. We have finally reached the end of May. I can't believe next week is June. Just a few days away. June. How in the world did that happen? This year has just, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but this year has just flown by. So I don't know what to say. But hey, if it's your first time here, this is BP from Bearded Villains, Northern Indiana, the host of The Heart of a Villain. I just want to get it out of the way real quick and remind all of you guys, if you're listening on regular podcast platforms, thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys are the true stalwarts. You are the ones that have been around for the longest time, because if you recall, the first 25 episodes were only audio. But if you want to listen or you want to get anything in the catalog, the back catalog of podcast episodes and all that merch stuff, you can get it at theheartofavillain.simplecast.com. Theheartofavillain.simplecast.com is where all that gobbledygook, all that stuff is. So guys, it's May 26th, and this is one of those weeks where it seems real life events around the world, here close to home, here in the States anyway, where real life events are so overwhelmingly, crushingly sad that you just kind of sit and you don't know. You want to stay off social media to an extent because you know what's going to happen there. And you want to hug your family. You want to hug your kids a little tighter. Weeks like this are weeks where you feel like maybe that little thing or those things that your kids were doing last week that annoyed the hell out of you don't so much annoy you as much now this week. And so in preparing for this week's episode, it beat me down. And from a father, the perspective of a father, from the perspective of a former retired law enforcement officer who was a firearms instructor and a SWAT team member, it took all I could do to muster up the energy, even to prepare to do a podcast episode this week. So I apologize in advance for the seemingly randomness and maybe unnecessary episode that this 136th episode is going to become. Maybe it's just something that I need to be here for to talk out. I don't know. There's no interview guest today. I didn't feel up to trying to arrange one. I got lots of stuff to talk about within chapter news and chapter merch, some very exciting things. And we're going to get to that. But the first thing that I wanted to bring up is I want to say a big shout out and send our thoughts and our prayers to our brother here at home within BV circles, to our brothers in Richmond and all of the Virginia guys and anybody else who was good friends with, good brothers with, close, who knew or whose lives were impacted by a brother that our brothers over in Virginia lost this past week. And I'm talking about Josh. It's always heartbreaking and shocking to hear when a brother passes away. And even, I guess, more so when it's a brother that is lost in such a quick, just taken from us so quickly. Anybody that doesn't know, Josh was involved in an automobile accident, was in a car accident several days ago. And his chapter, his brothers, his family, devastated by his loss. So I'll be mentioning here in just a few minutes that they have created the Richmond chapter has created a patch, the proceeds of which will be going to the family, to Josh's family. But I just wanted to take a second to pay homage to and respect to Josh. Thank you very much, guys. So, as I normally do, within this live stream podcast episode malady that we have here, some weeks are much better than others, as you guys know. Others are apparently train wrecks some days. I don't know. But we're going to get into our chapter merch and our chapter news in just a second. I want to give a shout out to those people who are here with us live, hanging out with us tonight. I know that Mars was here hanging out, and he's having a late dinner. So I want to give a shout out to Mars for being here live with us. Also, Travis just showed up. But he's going to be in and out listening to our show. I know that there are a few other people out there listening or watching right now. And thank you guys so much for being here. They're just not in the comments section, but it's a Thursday night, and it's been a really crazy week and lots of emotion-filled news and topics that have been floating around. People have been debating, arguing, whatever it is. And I think what it just comes down to is people just need to talk. So let's first, before we get any further into the episode, let's get into some chapter news and chapter merch, because there's actually something that I've never seen before, boys and girls. I have never seen a chapter split like I used to think that when a chapter, we've had it a couple times since this podcast has been around, we've had a few times where one chapter becomes three. And we had it again, we mentioned it last week, where Germany went from 1 to 3. But this one, boy, this one is This one's different. Okay, so we have switched camera angles here. So guys, what we're gonna do is, this is kind of crazy. I've never seen it before, but let's talk for a second about what happened in France. Let's talk for a second what happened in France since we have last been together. France had 1 chapter, and now they have 5. Best I can count. Best I can count. If everything I'm reading is correct from following the IG profiles and all the news that comes down, I started looking through and I searched, and it looks to me like we have 5 chapters now in France. I apologize if I'm wrong on that, but I see 5 chapter seals. So we have France Originals. We have Northside France. We have Southside France. We have Midlands France and West Coast France. So what an amazing leap this is for the chapters for our brothers over in France, because I know what it's like when you split up and new chapters emerge from one chapter. I don't have their exact numbers in front of me, but the fact that they had the sheer numbers enough to do this is pretty impressive, and kind of goes to what I've spoken about here in the past about when you have a huge number of guys in one chapter, it does make it hard for everybody to get together at the same time because you're so spread out and there's so many guys. But the fact that they just went from 1 to 5, pretty impressive. Pretty impressive. And, man, so, yeah, congratulations, all of you Bearded Villain brothers over in France. Again, we have the France Originals, Northside France, Southside France, Midlands France, and West Coast France. Pretty impressive, guys. Pretty cool. And in one day, or in 1 week, the number of BV chapters, just the percentage of BV chapters we have just went up by like 5% with one chapter's news. So I don't know. That's just my random math, and I'm not good at it, so don't count me on that. But pretty impressive, guys. Congratulations to you. Also, I want to give a shout out to, this came across, I tried to find out for sure, the Bearded Villains Oregon chapters, when they had a split earlier, we learned that they had some stuff coming down as far as logos and whatnot. This just popped up. I saw this week for the first time, and it's the Bearded Villains Eastern Oregonians. And this is a cool, if this is their official logo, it's pretty cool, very detailed. It's unlike a lot of others, and I would love to hear the story behind why they went with what they went with, this character here. And maybe he has a name, I don't know. But, and I know that the chapter page, the Eastern Oregon chapter page, has them referred to as Oregonians. So I'm assuming paying homage to a great 80s flick, being the Goonies. But Bearded Villains Eastern Oregonians with a new logo, and I'm only assuming that this is their new one. So congrats to you guys on putting this thing together. Very cool stuff. And then the last thing that I want to talk about in chapter news is just kind of a shout out and a heads up. You'll recall not too many days ago in a episode, I was speaking with a brother talking about some of the events that are coming up within the Bearded Villains NSW chapter down in Australia. And one of the things that we discussed was on tap for their chapter that was participating in a push-up challenge. And so they have now shared the links for the push-up challenge, and it's Bearded Villains Victoria and Bearded Villains NSW. They're doing a push-up challenge, and I would encourage you guys to go out to their chapter pages or to individual brothers pages in their chapters, because I think they each have an individual page for donations. But it's pretty impressive what these guys are going to be doing and how many push-ups they're going to be doing over the next month. And I don't know if anybody else wants to, just for fun, jump on board with this thing or try to help them out if you can. But since we already discussed this once on the chapter or on the podcast, I wanted to make sure that I had to give a shout out to these guys and re-mention it again. They're doing the push-up challenge down in Australia. Bearded Villains Victoria and Bearded Villains NSW chapters. That is chapter news for this week. All right. So let's we've got a bunch of chapter merch coming in. And there's a bunch of stuff that's left over, but we did have we had several chapters this week coming through. I think this will be the largest number of merch items that I've covered in one podcast episode, if I'm not mistaken. Mars comes in with a nice little comment here, says, glad to see the board getting to all of this. I guess that's why we don't want to have time to replace the Latin or Canadian board members. I'm sorry if you didn't want me to put that on the screen, but it's great. It was a great comment there. I had to include it. So yeah. So chapter merch, get out your pens, your pencils, your crayons, whatever it is you want to document and take notes about what you're going to have in chapter merch, because there is a bunch coming in. Okay, chapter merch. Let's get into it. Now, a few of these things at the beginning you've heard before, so I'm going to skim right through them. Rocket City Autism Patch, still out there and available, I think. RocketCityBV.BigCartel.com. Big, bold patch, $12. Go out and grab one if they're still out there. Swampside Villains, their Memorial Day patch. That's coming up this weekend, boys and girls. And also, I will say as a side note, pay attention here, this weekend as far as what you say to our veterans, because they will be the first ones to tell you the difference between Veterans Day, Memorial Day, Armed Forces Day. They'll be the first ones to stand up and tell you the difference, and there is a very specific difference. And if you truly want to honor them and their sacrifice and devotion to serving for the country, at least be aware of what the difference is between those different days so you can speak on the right thing. But this is the Swampside Villains. Memorial Day patch, limited edition patch, $15, swampsidevillains.bigcartel.com is where you can get that bad boy. Miami, still on their shirt and their patch combo, $22 and up for the shirt, $10 for the puzzle patch, piece patch thing that you got there. BV305-shop.myshopify.com. Also, the Bearded Villains Pennsylvania East, the Warrior patch for Ty. It says Warrior in red, white, and blue on it. PennsylvaniaVillainsEast.BigCartel.com. That is the one that has the proceeds of that are going to Ty and to help cover medical expenses and all. PennsylvaniaVillainsEast.BigCartel.com. Bearded Villains Chicago for their American Cancer Society walk. They have a shirt and patch, the shirt and patch combo kit for $24.99, and their patch alone for $12. Hit up our BVC brothers in Chicago for further details on that item, or items, rather, I guess would be the proper. Bearded Villains ENC, $12 US, $14 international, gets you their puzzle patch, autism patch. PayPal to BV Eastern North Carolina at gmail.com. That's where you can grab that one. Bearded Villains Scotland with a sale to honor their first captain, Brian Tate. The Memorial Brian Tate patch is £10. Available at beardedvillainsScotland.com. Moving on, this is a new one. Get your eyes out on this puppy. Bearded Villains SOMD, our Southern Maryland boys. Bringing in strong with a patch and shirt release. Their patch, they're calling their 2-year anniversary BV SOMD Red Shield, is $10. Not too shabby for a good quality patch. And then their Villains Assemble. This is kind of cool looking. Using the font from of course, the Marvel Avengers movies. It looks to be anyway. Very close if it's not. Villains Assemble. It's a pre-order shirt. $25. Has villains on the front and assemble on the back in the fancy writing. Grab one of those. It's bvsomd.com. bvsomd.com. Next up, Bearded Villains NSW. Remember, we talked about this a week ago. First mentioned it. BVNSW. It's their hashtag patch that they have in a bright blue, helping them raise some money for charity. $15 for this bad boy. Go out and grab it. It's something different than we see around a lot. Next up, we mentioned it before, and it has launched since we last spoke. The Bearded Villains Chattanooga BV patch. The Chattanooga Bearded Villains patch is available by purchasing through the Smoky Mountain page. So pay attention to that so you know where to go. Bearded Villains, the Chattanooga Villains patch is $12. It's their first chapter patch, available at SmokyMTNVillains.BigCartel.com. SmokyMTNVillains.BigCartel.com. The Smoky Mountain Boys are helping them out through their store. $12 for the inaugural Chattanooga Villains patch. Moving on. I told you, boys, we have a lot. North Georgia Bearded Villains. The North Georgia Bearded Villains. As you've heard me say for a couple weeks now, they have an event coming up this summer called the Dog Days of Summer. The Dog Days, D-A-W-G. Dog Days of Summer 2022 shirt. It is available for sale, for pre-sale, I'm assuming, till June 19th. It says Operation Rally Point on the front. Man, this shirt is decked out. It's like an OD green, if you're not watching this live to see. It's in an OD green. It has stuff on both sleeves. Very, very cool. And they have it in a patch. They have it in a shirt patch set for $30. And the patch is an OD version of their chapter patch. Very cool. Or the shirt alone for $25. Hit up the North Georgia Bearded Villains to grab a hold of this thing. It's very cool, especially if you like to wear the OD green and support veteran causes. Good times with this thing. $30 is all you pay for a shirt and patch combo. Awesome stuff. Next up, we have a shirt that was just dropped from Peru. Now, unfortunately, I have to preface this because it's only $20, which not so bad. It's $20 plus shipping for anybody, but of course, check with them. Send them a message if you want to get this in your international, because international rates may differ. However, I will say this. I asked about this because they didn't say anything about sizing. They are only available. They are not in big boy sizes. So I was a little disappointed in that, but not available in big boy sizes. Only in small up to 2X. So if you are a 3X or higher, you do not fit into their shirt unless you're trying to set a fashion statement. So 2X is the max they go for these Peru shirts. A little disappointed because I was gonna buy one, but can't do it. I don't need to be flaunting the flab and making it look like I'm in a cutoff shirt. So Bearded Villains Peru, $20 plus shipping for this thing. And then finally, as I mentioned earlier tonight here just a few minutes ago, the Bearded Villains Richmond chapter lost our brother Josh in an accident this past week. And they have a patch that they have created, and the patch, I've already seen many people around on IG talking about this and saying that they've already purchased several, 1, 2, 3, whatever it is. But the Bearded Villains, the Richmond Villains, have created this patch, and it's a variation of their chapter patch, and across the top it says R.I.P. Smooth, which is a nickname for him. R.I.P. Smooth. And then Richmond Villains, it's a big blue, very beautiful patch. Great honor to him. Bearded Villains, the Richmond chapter has this patch. It's available now. bvrichmond.bigcartel.com. bvrichmond.bigcartel.com. And again, this is a patch that all the proceeds are going to go right back to the family. So if you can see fit, go ahead and get out there and grab one of those as well. And that, boys and girls, is my chapter merch. Now, please, if for some reason I missed something that is relatively new that your chapter is doing, let me know, and I'll make sure I get it on next time. I apologize for not doing so this time. Okay. Well, we've had a few more people jump in and say hello, hello, hello. Bruce is here. I saw JD Moore is in the house as well. I saw Mr. Dave Ramsey coming in as well. Rababa, he arrived. He has arrived late to the party. Rababa, he is always on time, early even. The first one in the comment section before the show starts. He was late tonight, so we have to give him a hard time for that. Isn't that right, Bruce? Yeah, we do. Okay, guys. Well, so here's the deal. This show is all about, in my mind, this podcast is all about positivity. This podcast is all about helping to spread messages of hope and changing lives and all of the cool things that our brothers around the world are doing. And we are in a time right now over a couple of week period where I think it's a situation where our brothers, our different chapters around the world, or it seems like anyway, they're just kind of gathering steam. Lots and lots of plans coming up for the late spring, summer, fall months. Lots of events planned, lots of chapters that are usually very, very active chapters that are working towards something. They're working to make sure that they're set up for an event. I know that one of the very active chapters here locally in this part of the country in the U.S. is the Beardenville and the Chicago, the BVC chapter. They just recently, last week, had a fundraiser event that they did that was a pool tournament. And that was fun to see. Very unique, different idea, pool tournament. They have a bags tournament coming up in a few weeks as well. Cornhole, for those of you that don't refer to it as bags and whatever you call things. But they have that. And I know there's chapters out there that are gearing up for things. And the only thing I could say is that I want to be able to talk about, promote, and tell other brothers around that you guys are doing stuff. So please reach out to me and let me know. This is not a bragging thing. I've said it 100 times. But what we need to consider is that we are so spread out all over the U.S. for sure that I know of, but in other countries as well. Hell, we just had one chapter become 5 in the last week. We have brothers that since the pandemic has loosened all of the restrictions up around the world now, people are traveling again. Since all this is happening, we've got brothers traveling through jurisdictions and areas where there's chapters in existence. And how cool would it be, and I know our brother Radar can vouch for it, how cool is it when, if you're traveling through town somewhere on a vacation or otherwise, and you find out that there's a chapter locally to where you're currently at that's doing something, how cool is it if you could jump over there and help out and attend their event? But if you didn't know about it, what are you going to do? So keep up the promotions, keep up the good works and telling everybody out there, send it to me so I can help promote it, but pay attention to who's coming into your area. And at the very least, because we know how great it is to be able to sit down, break bread, have a drink, or whatever else with brothers that aren't local to you all the time. That's what this is about. It's not just about hanging out and meeting up with your brothers that are in your chapter. If you feel that that's what it is, you're missing out on a lot of what this brotherhood is. But that's a soapbox that we've covered before. But I say all of that because one of the other things that I talk about here is that I hate to talk and bring up topics that are very, very divisive. Religion, politics, oh my gosh. And I don't want to get into the realm of politics right now, per se. That is to only say and speak my mind for a second about the events that have happened here in the U.S. and Texas recently. And this comes from a need, I think, a feeling of, I think I just need to talk. I just need to talk about it for a minute. And it's not me being here to belittle anybody. It's not me here to change minds. Maybe this is just some therapy for old BP tonight. I don't know. But coming from the perspective that I have, being on the front lines and going through all of the training drills that are necessary, with the abundance of school shootings that have occurred over the last 20 years here in the U.S. If you're a member of a police department, you go through training on how to attack those threats. And especially given the fact that I was, for a great number of my years, a member of the local SWAT team as well, you go through further training. But as a father, as an officer, as a human, you're going to have thoughts when something like this happens. I think my viewpoint is a little bit different than the viewpoint of a great many other people out there who haven't shared in my specific experiences. A lot of people, and this is what bothers me right now, is that everybody wants to jump anytime this happens, and it's happening far too often, obviously. But when this stuff happens, everybody jumps into social media to share with the world what their personal beliefs are. And it's not an effort, I don't think. It doesn't seem like it's really ever in an effort to help solve the problem at hand. Instead, it seems like it's more about, hey, here's my opinion on it. Here's why your opinion is wrong. Here's where you're wrong. What you think is wrong, and it's never going to be right. Rather than, what can we do as a country to make any necessary changes? There's got to have to be some sort of a compromise. You can't have two opposing parties standing on opposite ends of a street just shouting at each other and talking about what they're doing wrong. Our political party system with the standard two parties right now are so diametrically opposed to the other's feelings and beliefs that they don't feel like there's any room for negotiation on some matters. And anything that has to do with the Second Amendment and or gun violence is one of the most divisive things out there. What annoys me more than anything is when people are willing to say change needs to happen. Yes. But then they are unwilling to have discussions on what possible change could be. It's like you're saying change needs to happen only if you understand my belief. Change needs to happen on your end. That's the frustrating thing. There's no compromise. We've got politicians out there who say, change needs to happen. It's terrible. It's terrible. We need to do something about it. But then if you were a little gremlin that's listening to their thoughts, their inner thoughts, what you're going to see, what you're going to hear instead is change needs to happen, provided that the other side listens to me. How are we ever going to get anything accomplished? I have some very specific thoughts on at least conversations that need to happen to better understand why these types of things happen. And I've tried to have, I am one, and you guys know this, I've said this before, I love having tough conversations with other people because I want to learn. I want to learn what makes you tick. I want to learn why it is that you think the way you think. I'm not one that feels like I need to railroad you into believing what I believe. I'm more interested in what makes you tick. Why do you, what about you and the way that you were brought up makes you feel the way that you do? But there are some hardcore facts that, regardless of how you're brought up, how I'm brought up, there's some very striking things that are out there, I think, that, yes, one side can explain away why this happens, and the other side can say, this is why this happens. But you're standing on opposite ends of the road and just yelling back and forth at each other. One thing's for sure. When I was growing up in the 70s and 80s, this didn't happen. If it did, it was so incredibly rare. But you never heard about anything like this. And then Columbine happened. And one side's quick to say, all this needs to happen. What bothers me is that all of these people shouting from opposite ends of the street aren't paying attention to looking at potential causes, or at least looking back on the fact that why is it that in my childhood this never happened? Why is it that when my parents were growing up this didn't happen? It's not, I will say this, and this is not because I'm not going to get on a soapbox right now and talk about how I am super supportive of the Second Amendment specifically. But I will say this. The difference isn't that the fact that the guns have changed drastically. Many of the same guns that have been used in the last 20 years were available 20 years ago, 25 years ago. Growing up, your parents, it was not uncommon for your parents, especially if they lived in the country in that generation, for them to drive to school, park their car at school, their truck at school, with a shotgun in the gun rack. These kinds of things happened a generation or two ago. The sad fact of it is that I've done some studying, and there's a good number of people out there that don't want to hear this part of it, but our youth, the generation that is currently beginning to be teenagers up to the segment that is now in their mid-20s to late 20s. This age group of people grew up at a time where they lost the meaning and the sanctity of what life was. And how did that happen? Honestly, scientifically, it's been proven that that generation of kids lost touch with the reality of death because they see it so prevalently and so commonly on TV, in film, on the internet, the video games that are out there. This is scientifically proven, boys and girls, that with the rise in violence of video games and the availability to be able to needlessly, willy-nilly just shoot, kill, whatever it is on a video game, they've lost touch for what it is. They lose that connection. And it becomes a video game in real life. I am not saying that's the only cause. But it is a factor that has to be discussed. A lot of these people that are these monsters that are considered to be evil beings that go out on these rampages, it is later found that they had a desire and love for first shooter video games. And they were able to play these games in youth, teenage years, and late teen years without any kind of moderation from the parents. The parents just let them go. Oh, they're just playing video games. But you don't realize what that's doing to the soul of the person that's doing it. That's a scientific fact, folks. So we have to first look at some of these causes. The people on the one side that talk about the Second Amendment and what it means, and then the other side of the argument that's saying that guns have changed so much over the years, that's true. As smart and intelligent as our forefathers were, our founding fathers, I understand the reasoning behind the wording that they came up with to create that Second Amendment, because they lived in a time where they just come off of a situation where they did not want to be run by a tyrannical government on the other side of the water. And their fear was that if the guns were taken away, that they'd never be able to defend themselves from the government like that. I understand that. But at the time, they're shooting muskets. Could it be that they would have ever imagined that the weapons that we have today, that we have access to, and that people can get their hands on routinely, could they have imagined 250 years ago that that was going to be a possibility? Probably not. I do not like the argument of the people that say guns don't kill people, people do. You can't legislate evil. Well, okay, yes, that's true. However, many of these people, and they talk about gun laws, and let's enforce the gun laws that we currently have, not make more. And by making any more gun laws, you're just hurting the people that follow the laws, the law-abiding citizens. Well, okay, that's an easy argument to make, but consider this. Look at the vast number of people that have been involved in these types of school shootings. Had they ever been charged criminally? Were they ever thought to be Were most of them ever considered to be a criminal before this ever happened? No. I don't have the specific statistics in front of me, but I looked back at some of the ones that are the most prevalent that that comes to your mind when you first think of school shootings. And these, for the most part, are not people that had a history of violence. These, for the most part, are not people that had been convicted of crimes. So therefore, these are not people that were inherently evil by any standard that the people knew of to begin with. These are not people that you say were non-law-abiding citizens. They were, by all intents and purposes, by most people's accounts, law-abiding citizens before they committed the crime. So I don't understand that argument. And I'm not here to give answers. I'm not here to, like I said, this is just a need for me to express. I don't have the answers, other than to say that it's time for us as parents, it's time for us as citizens, and it's time for us and those that are in the position to make the difficult choices to come together and think for a bit about what is best for the kids. The argument that we just need to arm the teachers or that we need to have armed guards. Well, if they have just armed guards in every school, why is that even a consideration? That doesn't happen anywhere else in the world. You're only saying that argument so that you can make yourself feel better about being safe so that you can keep the current gun status that you have and not change any of the current laws. I don't know. Why there's not 100% universal background checks and waiting periods on guns. Why there's not stipulations in there that, hey, if you already have, most people don't need, I carried an AR. I had a sniper rifle. I had access to that stuff and I used it all the time for training purposes. But is that going to be something that's going to be commonly available to you to protect yourself? You're not carrying it around with you. I don't agree that we need to arm teachers. I don't agree that we need to have more of an armed presence in the schools. That was never something I think that's one of the biggest problems is it's easy for us to say that now. Rather than try and figure out and solve that problem about why this is happening, rather than trying to figure that part of it out, all you're doing is adapting yourself to make yourself feel better for the current situation that it is. And that's still not a guarantee that anything's going to stop or lessen. You got to get to the root cause of things. And it's not just as simple as saying, by changing any of the laws, you're hurting the law-abiding citizens. It's so much more than that. And I'm not here to say you need to take guns out of the law-abiding citizens' hands. But the people that are so pro-gun, pro-Second Amendment won't even listen, it seems, to any conversation. We've got to do better, folks. We've got to be willing to have the hard conversations and see that and recognize that it's not attacking you. I'm not attacking you. I don't want you to attack me. We need to have those hard conversations and recognize that one side is not 100% right. I don't know, boys, girls. I just needed to talk about that for a second. It's bothersome. It really is. And I hate when it's so obvious that there is an existing problem and nobody seems to want to have the hard conversation about it. They're so bullheaded and so determined to prove to you they're right, or not even be willing to have a conversation about it. The United States is a very unique country for a lot of reasons. I don't like that it's unique for this reason. I am extremely proud to be an American. But things like this make me very, very unhappy and sad about not just the action, but sad because we have people in power who have the ability to make some changes, little changes, and they're unwilling to for fear of losing their office or for fear of losing support. If you are in a position where you can make a change, make that your lasting impression. Make that your legacy. Okay, you get one term. In this one term, we're going to do everything we can to fight for our kids, fight for our people. And it seems like that's not the concern. So, guys, I'm sorry. I'm going to roll right through. That's my bandwagon. That's my big speech for the day. And I'm sorry if I lost viewers for it. I'm sorry if you don't agree with it. That's just my perspective coming from where I come from. And I've been even more saddened to hear the reports. I hope that they're not accurate, but I'm seeing it more now in more reports that that law enforcement waited before they went in. I've heard some reports even as high as that the gunman was in the school for an hour before they breached the school. I just don't know. I know that were I in those shoes, and we are taught day one, you don't second guess another officer's actions if you weren't there to see it. That's true. But if a gunman goes into a school and I'm the only officer available, I'm not going to wait around. I'm not going to wait around for somebody to determine a path of approach or anything else. I don't know that I could live with myself knowing that I waited an hour. Anyway. All right, guys, let's I want to get into our calendar of events and see what we've got on tap here today. That's not the music that I wanted to play. Let's get into this one here. All right. We're going to go through these pretty quick here. You know what? Hey, just look across your screen. I'm not going to do a calendar of events tonight. We didn't have anything that we added to it from last week. So it's just rehashing the old, and they're coming across the screen right now. I just need to go sit down. I need to go sit down. I'm sitting down right now, but I need to go chill. Guys, thanks so much for being here. I'm just going to call it. I apologize right now if this has been a crazy, weird, or unhappy or unsettling podcast episode. Hopefully we'll be back to bigger, better, more normal things next week with episode 137. But guys, for now, this is going to wrap up episode 136 of the podcast. Remember, as I always say, Remember, it's okay not to be okay. If you are hurting, please find a brother to talk to. Remember, it's okay not to be okay. So, have a great night. Enjoy this weekend ahead. Hug your kids. Hug your family members. Give them love and tell them that they mean what they mean to you. Take care, guys. Stay safe.
From the start to the finish, go hard and we win, and it's the heart of a villain. It's the heart of a villain. From the start to the finish, go hard.